Because you said going back to source. And I don't think a lot of people understand what source really is, or source energy, or understanding like a level of source like that. Have you ever asked anybody, especially when it comes to people that are lacking in a um, God consciousness or a Christ consciousness to a degree? Have you ever asked, have you ever had anybody be like, oh, I don't believe in God or like a higher power or anything along those lines? Have you ever had that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm always baffled.
Have you ever asked them to ask them to say their name? So I'll do it to you really quick. So, Sae'Von, I want you to say your name out loud. Go for it whenever you're ready.
Oh, see, now I'm thinking too intellectually about it, but how most people would respond would be Sae'Von Malik Springer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'd like you to now say that to yourself on the count of three. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
I.
Okay, there you go. So did you say that? Did you say your name to yourself?
No.
Did you? So do it again.
Oh, that voice in my head. Okay, so the voice in my head that says yes.
Yes. So if you were to say it on the count of three, 1, 2, 3, boom. Okay, you said it.
Mm-hmm.
You did say it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're saying. So the question is, did you say it? Technically, you didn't speak, and me and James definitely didn't hear you. So who said it?
That's where the question comes in.
That's where I like to be like, so some people are kind of like, oh, God doesn't exist. And I'm like, and then I sometimes like to hit people with like, you are not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're the observer of kind of those things. So being able to kind of separate, those two, I like, and we have like this sense of identity where we're like, yes, like I understand that. But then there's this whole other viewpoint and this whole other like dimension of reality where you can kind of talk to yourself, but it's not, necessarily you didn't say it, you didn't speak it, but what necessarily that voice. And I kind of usually bring that to, that's where that source energy starts to begin. So I usually tell people this: Sae'Von, you are God living a Sae'Von experience. James is God living a James experience. And that gets to a whole nother deeper dimension of kind of like, because think about how many people are on this planet, and we all have different thoughts, different realities, different viewpoints, different perceptions. And it's like, if you really wanted to understand yourself as a source, you would want to go and unlearn. You would almost want to be a blank slate and know yourself without judgment and learn of the self without judgment. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to do. Like, think about it. We come into this world not knowing anything, right? And we're completely reliant on everybody else to tell us the rules. But then as we get older, we start to kind of like understand the rules ourselves a little bit. And we get to this own wisdom and like understanding. We start to separate like, oh, that was bad advice. This was good advice. Oh, I like that. I'm going to kind of hold on to that. Like as we grow in that awareness, and that's where we keep connecting with source in our sense of uniqueness. And we find identity, but realistically, there's only one. There's only the law of one. Have you read that book? I talked to James about that a little bit. Have you read The Law of One?
I haven't read The Law of One. I've read The Kabbalion, though. I mean, I've read a few different texts, but I think it's different texts communicate things differently. But that general idea that, even the idea that the contradiction of a zero or a state of non-being, and just to your point, how far you have to really start pulling to notice the contradictions and the wisdom and the ignorance and it's so much to chew on that sometimes, because even growing up how I did, I think a lot of us did in a very religious household, that sometimes was lacking what I felt was spirituality from my vantage point, because I just couldn't connect with how certain things were being communicated or even certain practices. But that's why I say when you initially ask me, anybody who answers that question, oh, do you believe in God? And they're like, no. I'm just kind of like, wow. okay, I don't know you, but that just told me a lot. And yeah, I think that's part of what's beautiful about this time we're living in is we are really seeing in real time a massive shift at a macro scale. And, like what is time anyway? So to your point about if everybody really stopped, and when you look at the studies that show people's different things that you can prove through quote unquote science being changed literally based on people's thoughts and just how the law of attraction, quantum physics, and all these things really work and how much consciousness drives it all. That when you start telling people that, I switched my diet because I needed to make sure I could be powered up, power a light bulb with a orange. People are kind of like, what? Like, why would that matter? Who cares about the vibratory field? And it's just like the fact that we can even sit down and discuss these things and have words to even put to some of these concepts, to me is an indication of where we are at collectively. And the optimism that you spoke about earlier. And why I wasn't in the same boat many years ago. I was very pessimistic when I first started doing some deep digging. And then I kind of had to pull myself back up. It was just like, actually, the fact that I'm looking into this says a lot, because I ain't that special.
But you are.
And see what I'm saying? The contradiction. Yeah. So it's like, hey, man.